Hello, podcast fans, and welcome back to another brand new episode, a marvelous episode, you might say, of the Silver Screen podcast. I am your regular host, Mike, and I am here being all hooked on a feeling, shall we say, along with my usual co-host, today coming to us as D.K Raccoon.
Yeah, but in a strange twist of fate, I was just about to say, you can't see me. I'm just moving that slow that I'm practically invisible.
Absolutely. Yes. You can't see our thumbnails all that clearly at the moment, but weirdly enough, yes, I have the avatar of Star-Lord, and DK, who is usually Star-Lord, is Rocket. Don't ask. We just we just went with it.
Contrary.
Exactly. And we are joined by our regular guest when it comes to all things Marvel, and a frequent guest on our shows, Tobi. Welcome back, Tobi.
Thanks for having me. I'm back again, and I don't have an icon on my profile because nobody told me.
Well, we don't want to make it complex, because as soon as we try to do things like that, tech issues get in the way, and then it takes 3 hours to even start recording. So, oh well. So yeah, if you hadn't guessed by our not so subtle hints, me and the guys and my little mascot that you can see on screen if you're on YouTube, little mini Star-Lord, are here to review Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Yeah, we're going to be talking all about these supervisors of the solar system. Oh, no, that's the cheap own brand knockoff version. Sorry.
You catch it, they're stunt doubles.
Nice. Always appreciate a good Spaceballs reference. Yeah, apologies. I just wanted to get that joke in there because we did find a few funny Guardians memes, and maybe I'll share a couple more randomly during the editing process. So keep an eye out for that if you're on our YouTube. There's a reason to go and subscribe if ever there was one. But yeah, today, as I said, we're talking Guardians of the Galaxy, just in time for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, the final chapter as it's being billed for these particular characters, which is coming out yesterday as you're listening to this, because, yeah, Marvel decided to release a film on a Wednesday when it's a big film. So if you've already seen Volume 3, no spoilers, please. But yeah, hopefully you'll still get something out of going back to where this all began. And seeing what we think of this, and refreshing your memory of Guardians of the Galaxy, which I will say I appreciated doing, because I just watched this last night, as everybody knows, on our Discord in particular, and I was getting a lot out of it, being able to watch it with this analytical, kind of more critical eye, and yeah, enjoyed myself. Spoiler alert. So yeah, and you were saying, DK, you're kind of relying more on memory today.
Yeah, so probably not much input from me, because my memory is for shit, as anybody who listens regularly will know.
Absolutely.
I was getting a lot out of it because I forgot most of things that happened. I was like, this happened? What? This was in the movie? I did not remember.
And I allude to it in my review or in my conclusion, I think, but I've seen this film so many times I could have just acted it out. I didn't need to watch it, but it was nice to do it, because I was actually noticing little things and background moments that you don't until you've watched a film like 10 plus times, which I have with this movie.
That is kind of why, at the end of the day, I just thought it'd be fine. I've seen it that many times.
Oh, yeah, I could have gotten away with not watching it, but I was like, I'll do it. I'll watch it and look for things. And like I said, I think hopefully I've got some bits and pieces to contribute. But if you are a regular viewer / listener, you do know we break this down into sections, and we always start with the behind the scenes section. And that's usually the purview of our little furry hamster friend over there.
What cheesy music do you have for me this week, Mike?
Do you know, I didn't even think, so I haven't got it queued up. So... let me just scroll till I can find it. I keep forgetting we're going to do the background music every now and then. Let's see. There's something called Dance Pop, and that sounds significantly, Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, let's try that.
So let's give that a shot. It's loading. Yeah, that seems Guardians-ish.
Yeah, go for it. Now, I mean, what can you say about this that isn't already known? It's a behind-the-scenes dream for the subject matter, but a nightmare for attempting to scrape together things that your average listener might not already be aware of. Chances are everything that I mention's common knowledge, but for those fans out there who aren't as obsessed with these movies as some of us, I mean, you never know. Something may be new to impress / discuss with your co-workers with tomorrow. Now, Gunn originally didn't want Chris Pratt for the role, didn't even want to see him read for the role, thinking of him only as the chubby guy from Parks and Rec. He was only convinced at the end of the auditions, some say by his assistant, some say the casting director, to let Pratt try. After around 30 seconds, Gunn felt that Pratt was perfect for the role. In fact, he was so sure that he was allegedly prepared to offer him the role, even if he didn't get in shape on time, joking that he would be willing to CGI a six-pack for Pratt. He was that impressed. Now, according to Vin Diesel, he recorded the line, "I am Groot," over 1,000 times, and allegedly recorded his lines while wearing the stilts he used for the performance. He loved playing the character so much he would attend the premieres on said stilts wearing a t-shirt with "I am Groot" emblazoned upon it. And I get the feeling that phrase is going to come up quite a few times today. Now, Bradley Cooper has stated he was paid more for this movie than he was for both Silver Linings Playbook and The Hangover combined. And sticking on the subject of actors, many of Gunn's frequent collaborators can be found making subtle cameos in the movie. Michael Rooker, Michael Rooker, not so subtle. Nathan Fillion, Rob Zombie, Lloyd Kaufman, and Greg Henry, all of which worked with Gunn on Slither and Super prior to Guardians.
Shall we tell people where they can find them?
Yeah, all right. Nathan Fillion is the blue nostril alien that Groot sticks his tendrils up. Well, I should rephrase that. He's the blue alien that Groot sticks his tendrils up his nostrils. It's not a porn parody. Don't worry about it. Rob Zombie is the voice of a Ravager, I believe.
I didn't know that one, but okay.
Yeah, and Lloyd Kaufman is a Kiln inmate that shouts "murderer" at Gamora, I believe.
And yes, I did see that guy here.
Yeah, and if you can't find Greg Henry, then I wouldn't bother.
Yeah, Greg Henry and Michael Rooker are pretty easy to find.
Yeah. Henry, who plays Peter's grandfather, was supposed to have a scene at the end of the movie. Gunn revealed that the film originally closed with Quill's grandfather looking up at the stars after seeing a photograph of a young Meredith and Peter. Gunn stated, "He's got this photograph of Meredith and Peter as a little boy, and he looks up at the stars, and we go up to the stars, and it was really sweet. It means that he must have seen Quill getting abducted at the end of that day, and is still waiting for him to return. But it was so freaking sad, we just took it out." However, one cameo that didn't pan out was old Shellhead. At the time of shooting, in the comic books, Iron Man had just become the latest member of the Guardians team. There was a plan to feature a small appearance by RDJ as a reference to this. Unfortunately, it was nixed when Downey Jr. stated that his contract had run its course and he may not return. Downey, of course, obviously later signed on for a contract to bring him back for Infinity War and Endgame. The Jackson Pollock line was ad-libbed by Pratt after a discussion with Gunn. Gunn was unsure that the producers would allow it to be kept in due to its risque nature. However, while Gunn removed scenes from the film in order to allow it to remain, Pratt convinced Feige on his own to let it stay. It ended up getting the biggest laugh of the movie in screenings. And I think I've mentioned this to you, Mike, before. I do like the euphemism one user put on IMDb regarding this in an attempt to remain pure and virtuous. And I quote, "Black lights can illuminate certain biological substances. This quip indicates that in the past, serious carnage had taken place aboard, involving victims of varying colours." I got nothing. I mean, if you're wearing blinkers to that extent, good luck to you.
Best of luck. Yeah.
And on the subject of wordplay, another little thing that I think you might appreciate, Mike, if you're not already aware, probably are, but oh well. When the movie cuts to Ronan's ship, the Darkcaster, it features a line of coordinates underneath. You put those numbers into some translation software that translates numbers to letters. It comes out as "This is Mom's cancer."
Wow, okay. I did not know that, but that's pretty wild. Okay.
Now, Gunn's obsession with giving a great comic book adaptation has naturally led to Volume 1, 2, and no doubt 3. You know, people who've seen it will know. Being packed to the veritable gift for eagle-eyed comic book fans. From cameo appearances of the celestial Aeson the Searcher to the planet named after the first Kree leader to the character of Barit, there's a multitude in there. Obviously, the Collector's Emporium contains a great many of these. Not only is it filled with various trinkets from across the books, as well as Gunn's own little in-jokes, it also introduces to the MCU the characters of Howard and Cosmo. But not only that, it also features... Yes. Yeah, it also... I mean, it's still not the George Lucas one, but, beggars can't be choosers. The collection also features a sovereign cocoon, which had many speculating for some time that Adam Warlock would emerge from, as well as specimens of alien races such as the Chitauri, the Dark Elves, Frost Giants, Zeronian, Hectorian. In fact, Stan Lee, who eventually went on to play the Xandarian Ladies' Man under observation by Rocky and Groot at the beginning of the movie, was due to cameo in Tivan's collection. Being kept in one of the cabinets, he would give Groot the middle finger. Alas, Disney execs weren't happy with this and had Gunn change the cameo to the one we all saw on screen.
But Star-Lord gives the middle finger in the movie anyway.
I know. Maybe they just didn't think it was appropriate for Stan. I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah, and then, Ryan Reynolds came on and said, yeah, watch this.
Yeah,
now,
exactly.
Speaking of Easter eggs, Gunn claims, and has done for years, that there is one Easter egg in the movie which still hasn't been figured out. And at one point offered up to $100,000 to the first person that nailed it. Now, in recent years, internet sleuths Mastertainment and New Rock Stars have both respectively put forward the theory that, like the Dark Aster coordinates, this Easter egg has something to do with Peter's mother, Meredith. Now, on both occasions, Gunn has stated they're partially correct, but the full thing has, to the time of this recording, never been successfully guessed or revealed by Gunn. And finally, during the closing credits, the human-animal line reads, "No raccoons or tree creatures were harmed during the making of this film."
I do remember seeing that, yeah. Awesome. Yeah, there's lots to unpack and an awful lot in, as you said, especially for eagle-eyed nerds like ourselves, where I think every 5 or 10 minutes or so I was just going like, oh, that thing.
Yeah, it is just a treat, I think, for comic book fans, this movie.
Yeah, I will. I think the sequel's even more so. But yeah, I absolutely. It really is. It's such a treat, and yeah, we were all Captain America shouting, "I understood that reference" for a while.
I understood that reference.
Awesome. Right. Well, we may as well jump straight in then with the rest of our review, if that's okay with you guys.
Yeah.
You know that we just, if you're a regular listener, you know anyway that we do this kind of just by category, so it's not necessarily linear with the movie. We break the categories down like acting, directing, visual effects, music and sound, writing and plot, etc., etc., etc. And because I am sick of seeming like I'm the one doing all the talking and kind of, guiding the conversation a little bit too forcefully, I thought for a change, I'd throw it over to you guys today. And we'll start with our guest and say, Tobi, what would you like to talk about first? Which category do you think is worth starting on?
Yeah, dump it on me. Let me do the work. Let's talk about acting.
Acting. Well, that's normally what we do anyway. So that's, that's
Well,
fair enough. So yeah, what did you want to bring up first of all about the acting? There's lots to obviously say. Awful lot of people in this movie, so yeah.
I was because you don't really notice this. I think when you watch it the first time, how good Zoe Saldana is as Gamora, because of all the green that distracts. I think in the first viewing, but now I could watch it more clearly, and she is so good. There's so many little things that are just happening that I'm just amazing.
Yeah, I don't have many notes on Zoe Saldana, but Saldana, I should say. But I will jump in there to say that I found her very hard to like at first, but I think that's the point because you're never sure of her allegiance, and she's kind of, antagonistic towards them. But one moment that I just didn't fully register until this viewing that I absolutely love is when it's the very end of the movie and she's had the conversation earlier with Quill about I don't dance and everything, and he puts on the second awesome mix and she just gives the single most subtle little dance move in his direction and smiles, and I was like, that is so awesome. I love
that. You didn't notice that before?
I don't know if I registered it. I was just like, oh, she's smiling. And then this time around I was like, she's actually doing a little dance. I get it now. That's so cool. I'm sometimes a bit slow, or if I'm watching in poor quality, I don't pick up on these things. But yeah, it does kind of annoy me that, spoiler alert, if you're not caught up with the MCU, those kind of really sweet moments of character growth are just gone now, unfortunately. But yeah, it's kind of sucky that we have to now have a Gamora that's from before this movie. So every bit of character depth is just killed. But we'll see what Volume 3 brings, I guess. And apologies, Toby, you were saying so.
And I think I was especially amazed in the prison sequence, because this is, I think, the moment where she's the most caught between stuff, the most troubled, I think, in that moment, and she's really good. Yeah, and I think that's the best moments, I think.
I'm assuming there's tons of lines we could get into, but it just popped into my head because you said that. I'm assuming you really like the exasperated line of, I'm going to die surrounded by the biggest idiots in the universe.
Yeah.
From Gamora.
That was fun.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Awesome. DK, did you have any thoughts on Zoe?
I've been in love with Zoe Saldana since The Terminal. And this didn't discourage me. I think she's absolutely amazing in this, and I love the little touches. Like you said about her dancing. I think she's got a great chemistry. In fact, I think they've all got a great chemistry when it comes to this movie. I don't think there's one, dud of a player. I know I'm switching horses, mid race, but I want to bring up Dave Bautista. This was the first time I'd seen him act in anything, and you've got that stereotype of old wrestlers turning into acting from the heady days of that Hulk Hogan babysitting movie. Yeah.
What was that called? Dang. I was ready to say Suburban Commando. It's something Nanny, but it's not Mr. Nanny, I don't think. But I know what you mean.
So, Dwayne Johnson aside, that's my overriding impression. Whenever a wrestler says, "Oh, they're into acting" and stuff like that, but Dave Bautista in this just absolutely blew me away. I was never a big fan of Drax in the comic books. He was a bit, he was kind of a bit too tough guy, and I don't go in for that kind of stuff. So to see him imbued with humor like Bautista did, it was a revelation. I love that character in this movie. Love it.
I was wrong, by the way. It is Mr. Nanny, but I just looked it up. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I think to be honest, I've not seen a lot of the cast in this. I never watched Parks and Rec, so I didn't have much of an impression of Chris Pratt. And they all made a really good impression on me. I don't think, without seeming generalizing too early, I don't think there's a dud member of this cast.
Talking about Dave Bautista.
Go for it.
I want to say something about. As already said, he's amazing in this role. Blah blah blah. We covered this, but I just love, because we were talking about wrestlers that are gone into acting, how serious he takes acting. Like not only in this movie, but in other movies and other stuff, he gives a lot of interviews and talks about different stuff he wants to act in, not always going for the, I'd say, wrestling actor typecast, but also wants to do other stuff and go in other lanes.
Yeah, I do like that he's branching out. I thought it was the only kind of decent thing in Knock at the Cabin.
I was going to say the same thing, actually. Yeah. No, with regards to Bautista, that was the note I had. I just said I think he's a kind of a revelation. And like you kind of were hinting at, DK, I think he's in the conversation for best wrestler turned actor. Probably, as you said, alongside Dwayne Johnson, but we'll see how many more cinematic universes he destroys before we.
I honestly do think Dwayne Johnson has kind of typecast himself into certain roles, and I can't say for sure because it's just alleged what he has stipulated in his contract. But when it comes to Batista seems to be seeking out roles that don't fit the wrestler mold, and I do love that about him.
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm sure you both know that there's the old adage that says dying is easy, comedy is hard. And I think that in a way that means that Bautista has the hardest job in the film because he gets the bulk of the comedy, and having comedy timing and selling it is way harder than it looks, which isn't to say that drama and stuff isn't hard. But to come basically as your first big acting gig and have to sell really broad comedy and do it is just so incredible. I am aware that there is criticism from some quarters that the character is nothing like the comic book version. He's not really the Destroyer. But having read a couple of Guardians comics, that version of the character is so dour and so
it's just a complete turn off for me, that character, and I was dreading seeing that character on screen. So he imbued it with a life that I honestly didn't think possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Going back to the acting, not only he has to do a lot of the comedy, he is the butt of the joke, which I think is even harder to do. If you don't want just insulting other people jokingly, I think that's a little easier acting wise than being the butt of the joke always.
Yeah. And the lines that he receives, it would have been so easy for him to, put on a knowing game face and things like that. But he plays it so straight. He sells it perfectly.
Yeah.
That's what I mean, the timing and the pitching. And this is a very random note. I won't move fully onto this now. But related to that, I do think in terms of the writing, it's kind of nice that even as kind of you said, Toby, there are people that are butts of the joke. They get their moment of reversing that and coming out triumphant. So I think it's because of that it's so glorious when Drax kills Korath the Pursuer and literally just says, throat to the neck means kill. Metaphor. And you just get Star-Lord going, yeah, kind of. I was like, that wouldn't have worked if it hadn't been kind of a silly thing that we were laughing at the whole movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, one performance I didn't like that I thought just was too weird and what are they doing was the collector Benicio del Toro. I just don't know. He seems to think he's Nicolas Cage in one of his more outrageous performances, and he's not. Basically.
But I kind of love that. I think it fits in. If it was in any other Marvel movie, and I know he had the post scene in Dark World, but if it were any other Marvel movie, it wouldn't sell it. But because it's amongst this wacky collection of characters, I think it works fine. I wish I could get away with introducing myself in that manner day to day.
There's moments and it's things that I think were probably in the script so much as not necessarily acting choices, and it's going to be very hard to describe non-visually. There's that moment when he's talking about the orb and he does this weird thing where he like shakes both hands and does this weird move, and then Rocket completely mocks him and does the same thing. And I
love that shit.
It's far too broad. It had a real danger for me of slipping into. Let's not get into full-on parody. I mean, there's really funny stuff, but we're keeping the reality, the verisimilitude of the movie, and he is the one character that I think is at real risk of like, oh, come on, be careful here, So yeah. Anyway, but obviously you don't agree with me, DK.
No, I honestly, like as I said, I don't think there's a single. I think the one that obviously plays it the most straight is Lee Pace, and I'm wondering how much of a difficult job that must have been when you look at how much fun everyone else is having. I was just going to say I didn't want to do a disservice to Zoe Saldana because she's just attractive, and I think she's just eye candy, and that's it. By this point, she's been in several franchises, and I think she does an absolutely amazing job in. As you say at the start, you're not particularly enamored with her, and she does an amazing job of giving a little character arc. Obviously, she gets more of one in the second one, of giving that little character arc. So eventually, you come around to care about Gamora, and the fact that I don't know if it's down to the writing. I don't want to get into a tit for tat with other franchises, but I think she stands out in Guardians. I think it plays to her strengths more than it does in, say, Avatar or Star Trek.
I think she certainly gets in this movie the biggest character growth. It's the biggest change of feeling from start to end, at least until we get into the whole movies overall. And then you have Nebula's change from Volume 1 to where we are in Volume 3, which is just night and day, basically, you know. And it's probably a sort of macrocosm of the same kind of idea, just really well written. But that's also including 2 Avengers movies and I guess briefly a Thor movie, but we can probably just discount that. So yeah, fair enough. But yeah, so Toby, what did you want to bring up next for the acting then? Like I said, there's a lot of people to get to touch on you.
Yeah, going back to the collector, I do have one thing to say. I think it works in this limited role that he has. I think if it was a bigger role, I'd agree that it wouldn't work, but I feel like in this limited time that he is present, I think it works well enough. Not amazing, but good enough.
That's probably fair, yeah, fair enough. Awesome. So, well, we haven't talked about the main, arguably, character here, Chris Pratt as Star-Lord. So what did you, Toby, think of our Peter Quill.
To be honest, I don't have a lot of specific notes to that. I mean, he's great, but I don't have like one thing I can point out and go like, I want to talk about that. To be honest.
Okay, but you thought he was fine, to say the very least, in the roles.
I mean, he was great, but there isn't like one thing that I can point out to that I notice actively.
That's fair enough. Well, before I sort of say what I have a little few notes wise, DK, you're the big Star-Lord fan, so what did you think of Chris Pratt as your hero?
I think he did an admirable job. As I said, I wasn't really conscious of who Chris Pratt was prior to this movie. I think he did a bang up job. I'm glad that he ended up with the role. I mean, looking at some of the other people that it was offered to, apparently it was offered to Matthew McConaughey at first, which to me just wouldn't have worked. And apparently Zachary Levi was in the running at one point. And again,
oh no.
I don't know if it would have been that different. I mean, he just plays Shazam in much the same way. So
he does, but I think and I'm sometimes I'm loath to admit this because politics outside. He's not my favorite person, but I don't think anybody could have done it as well as Chris Pratt. I think I just love how he portrays the character. I will. Yeah. The caveat is I do prefer the Star-Lord from the video game, but as far as movies go, I think Chris Pratt's good, and I guess his heart's in his right place, in the right place. I mean, apparently he stole the Star-Lord costume from the set so he could visit sick kids in hospital as Star-Lord. So I mean, anybody that does that, they're all right in my book. And again, politics aside, he seems like a decent person. I think I've only ever seen him in this, Passengers, and the Lego movie, and it's not really a broad spectrum of things to see him in. But considering this was his first major role, especially one that I'd seen him in, and he was in Zero Dark 30 and stuff like that. But I
would say Parks and Rec was a pretty big role, just because you didn't watch it. But okay.
Nothing exists outside of my limited scope. So yeah, I thought it was really good. Really good, as you say, Star-Lord is my guy. So to see him portrayed on screen and to see him portrayed so well,
I think I can just completely disregard Chris Pratt and view him as Star-Lord and view the performance outside of anything else, because I kind of have to. And I think if you're looking at his performance here, I think it's really charming, even when he's supposed to be a douchebag, which again is kind of hard to pull off, because when you have moments like telling Barit, "Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot you were there," that shouldn't work. You should be like, "What a jerk this guy is." And yet, like I said, he kind of still has this air of, "Oh, you scamp."
This is it. I mean, let's be honest. None of them are, pure characters. They're all assholes, basically. But you just can't help but love them. I mean, even if you look at Michael Rooker as Yondu, you shouldn't like this guy. He's just a git for a lot of the movie. But you can't.
I'll be honest, I didn't really like him in the first movie. It took till Guardians 2 to really get the whole what they were going for with Yondu. But now that I have that context and I go back to 1, I can certainly see that they're seeding things and setting them up there.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean, there's moments where I was just kind of like, "Oh, I get it now."
Bully.
Yeah. But even in the moment where oh, I'm sorry, I've got to set an example because I'm the captain for everyone, and he's holding the arrow to his neck. I get the sense that there's a kind of he knows Peter's going to say something to get himself out of this, and he's waiting for it. He was never going to really go through with it, kind of thing, So yeah, there's moments there where I have to think it's the Yondu we'll come to know. But yeah, as I say, when it comes to Chris Pratt Star-Lord, though, I think you feel for him and you root for him, and that's just as well because he has all of the emotional weight and gut punches of the movie. But if he wasn't as good, I don't think that dance off at the end would be anywhere near.
He wouldn't be able to pull it off. A lesser actor, and honestly, I don't think Levi would have been able to pull it off.
I just want to say quickly then as well, and then I'll jump back to you guys. Bradley Cooper as Rocket just constantly surprises me, because you could tell me if I didn't know that it was Bradley Cooper, and even when you tell me, I'm like, is it? Because I do not hear that guy in this voice at all. And I'm just so impressed. He is the absolute emotional heart of the film. And it doesn't sound like a Bradley Cooper performance at all. And I've seen Bradley Cooper in things. It's not like I don't know what he sounds like. I've seen Silver Linings Playbook and Hangover and all that. And I'm like, I don't know where this grumpy, I guess, pseudo Brooklyn-y type voice comes from, but it really bloody works, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
I think he's really good. Same for Vin Diesel. I mean, I've not seen, what can you say about Vin Diesel?
What can you say about Vin Diesel that
I
hasn't already been said?
Yeah. I wasn't, again, I wasn't a big fan of the Fast and the Furious movies when I saw this. I'd seen one. I'd seen a couple of the Riddick movies. He felt like a very one-note actor, not to do a disservice to him. But, yeah, he impressed me. And I know, I know he only had one line, but the amount he had to convey with one line and, give it different emotion. I'm Groot. Again, not one member of this cast to me that were a duffer.
I think Vin Diesel does what he's expected to very well, but I will say for me, I think that character's impact has very little to do with him. I wouldn't, I'd put a percentage of it on that vocal performance, but like you said, it's 3 words. There's only so much you can do. And yes, he does give it that bit of range, and there are some great moments, but I think for me, whoever does the performance capture on set and the visual effects team and the actors around him who are having to sell that to what I assume is a guy on stilts with a tennis ball stuck to his head or something. This is who I would give those plaudits to, as opposed to a dude who sat in a booth, even regardless of how many languages he recorded it in and said, I am Groot hundreds of times. Again, not to downplay it. It's great that he's good in it and everything, but yeah, I don't think he's the reason we love that character at all. I think pretty much anybody could have done it, really.
Yeah, I think it's the kind of performance that is very good, but also it's not like a performance where only this person could have done this. It's like, other people could have done it as well, but it's good. It's still good.
Absolutely.
Doesn't discredit that.
Did I have anyone else you wanted to talk about, Toby?
Do we have anyone left?
There's lots. I've got a few, but I'll throw them to you and ask what you guys think.
Yeah.
First of all,
Nebula. We have Nebula.
Yeah, that was literally my next thing. Karen Gillan as Nebula. What did you think about that?
I think a lot of stuff about Nebula that is coming in the later movies. Mm-hmm. We really see how it takes root in here. I'm Groot. Yeah, and I really like that. Because I feel like if you just take this movie isolated, I feel like Karen Gillan does not get a lot to play with, a little bit. But I feel like it really starts to shine in the later movies. But she's still great in the little stuff that she gets, but she's not the focus in this movie. She only gets little parts that are great.
Yeah, I think very similarly. I remember when I first saw this in particular, it was really hard not to just see Amy Pond, because this was just after Doctor Who, and we're all nerds and Doctor Who fans, and it's even weirder because she played Amy Pond with her actual natural Scottish accent. So it took a lot of adjusting for me to get used to the American accent she's doing in this film. And I do think it's a little bit ropey in this first movie. It gets better. And I would say that about everything. Like, the overall performance improves with every film. The writing for the character improves. And I think Karen definitely eases into that role, shall we say, or grows into that role in really impressive ways. And it's nice that you can see the start of that here, but she's not as strong in this first movie, if I was really nitpicky. DK, what did you think? Thoughts about that? Or
I was just excited to see Amy Pond on the big screen, if I'm being honest, mate.
Who's that? Who's there? You watch it, because I am armed and really dangerous and cross.
We are all big nerds. Fair enough.
I think the standout moment for her in this movie was when she was with Thanos on this floating island. And it's very clear also in the writing that she was just not the focus in this movie.
Yeah.
And can't blame anyone for that.
Yeah.
It would have been too much if she would have get more focus. I think she gets a good amount of role in this movie that builds upon later movies. And
for sure. You kind of already mentioned him, but I did want to say about Lee Pace, DK. I used to not be all that impressed with his performance in this movie. Then I saw his performance in the Hobbit movies, and I was like, "Oh, you're really good." Okay, it could have been so much worse in Guardians of the Galaxy then. But yeah, I don't think he's especially impressive. Like you say, he's kind of overshadowed because the film has to set up Thanos, and you've got Nebula doing a lot of the running around and stuff. So
he's pretty much a straight guy to everyone else in this movie, and it's not an enviable position. But I think with what he has to deal with, I think he's decent. I've always been
he tries,
since Pushing Daisies, I've been a fan of Lee Pace. So
that's the performance, yeah. I mean, like I said, he tries at times, but I just don't think because, like you said, he has to be the straight man and be serious, and so when he gets really shouty and angry and gives,
you call me boy. I will unfurl 1,000 years of Kree justice on Xandar and burn it to its core. Then Thanos, I'm coming for you.
Like, that would be good if this movie was playing everything fully straight, but it kind of isn't. But how much of that do you put on the director for not giving you the tone of what you're supposed to be acting out,
He is this movie's Ernie Wise, let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, he's not the most memorable villain in the MCU either, bless him, but yeah.
He's by far not the worst.
He's not the least memorable because that one has to go to... Did you guys know Jaimon Honsu's in this movie?
Who?
The wizard from Shazam, Bless him. He's in this movie. He got a paycheck.
This sounds awful. Because I think he's a fantastic actor, but I honestly remember Christopher Fairbank in this movie more than Hansu.
Yeah. There's a lot of, like you said, because there's so many sort of other little roles and stuff, it's kind of hard not to get lost in that shuffle. And the character of Korath the Pursuer has no reason to be in this movie other than that one joke. And you just feel like you couldn't have saved him for a better future appearance because he gets killed off on some... I mean, he does... Believe it or not, he and Ronan do reappear in the MCU later and yet make even less memorable appearances that time.
To be fair, you could level that accusation at a lot of MCU characters. I mean, there's a lot of names from the books that they just think, let's get this person in.
Well, as you said, like the changes they make to even Yondu at a start, but then like the likes of Barit and these background characters, even Karina, it's like, well, that's just a name you wanted to throw out to make the geeks go,
I understood that reference.
That's the trouble. There are so many good actors in this, and some of them give such small roles, like John C. Reilly, Glenn Close, and I just think they've just done really well casting wise. I think they've in my opinion. I mean, yes, you have standout roles in the MCU that you couldn't imagine anybody better than RDJ to play Iron Man or Chris Evans to play Cap.
Yeah, for sure.
But in this movie, every single person, in my mind, really is just perfect for the role.
Yeah, I had a very similar note where I just said John C. Reilly, Peter Serafinovich, and Glenn Close are all severely underrated and all bring so much more than you would initially think to the role when you're watching it back, and you're like, oh yeah, because there's so much going on, they get lost in the shuffle a bit, but they're all great performances with really good moments. And in particular, I have to shout out Laura Haddock as Meredith Quill, because I think that's central to the film, even though it's such a small role. And she is an actress that I did actually know about before Guardians. If you don't know, she's British, and she had a role in a BBC Three sitcom called How Not to Live Your Life, which is surprisingly funny, and I recommend if you can find it. But I'd never expected to see her in a big screen movie, and to see her completely transform into this character and sell this big emotional moment. I was like, this woman's good. I can't wait to see what roles she gets next. And then she starred in Transformers The Last Night. So we'll move on quickly from that.
I mean, Greg Henry, he's not in it much, but I mean, he's really good. But I do want to go back to Chris Fairbanks. I think he's like the everyman actor. He's appeared in so much. I mean, I knew him when he started in Auf Wiedersehen, Pet.
I was going to say this.
He's in Star Wars. He's in the MCU. He was in Batman. He was in The Fifth Element. He's just that kind of character actor that crops up every once in a while, and you go, oh, it's him. And then, the action moves on and he's completely forgotten about. And I think he's a very underrated actor. And he must be knocking on a bit these days, because we'd have seen Pepper quite some time ago. But yeah,
I don't want to believe that.
mate, tell me about it.
Yeah, I don't have this note, but you've brought it up to my head for some reason, so I wanted to say it now as well. Sean Gunn in this movie as, I forget the character's name now, but yeah, is really good as the sort of Ravager character that he plays. I feel terrible for not Kraglin, that's it. But yeah, he does a really good job as Kraglin, and even in that limited role, I think he's great. But also, you have to remember, he's the on-screen raccoon.
Yeah,
and I think that is such a good motion capture type performance when you think of the little subtle things that character does, and that he had to be there. And I've seen the behind the scenes things where he's like on his hands and knees during the circle scene and stuff, and it's like he's committing, bless him, to this. And
that screenshot of Dave Bautista stroking his head, it's just
yeah. And yet the scene in the movie is so emotional. It's just it's incredible. What was I going to say? So, yeah, I only have two more notes about acting. First of all, Josh Brolin as Thanos. This is his first appearance in the role, because it was Damon Poitier who played the very brief appearance at the end of Avengers. And I think, talk about a killer first appearance for Josh Brolin in this movie as Thanos, whether it be, studio mandated or not. Were you guys impressed with seeing the Mad Titan for the first time? Well, second, I guess, but okay.
It was good to see him, to see this, at this point when you saw it in the cinema, the story was just unfolding. So it's good to see where it was going. He was to me, he was arguably more menacing at this point than he was later on his appearances. But he made a decent impression. And again, studio mandated, as you say. But yeah, I mean, the limited screen time that he had, he made good use of it.
Yeah, I mean, I compare it to like the Emperor in Empire Strikes Back. Like, there's a really terrible, bigger threat out there than the thing you're following, and it's nice setup. But then, you see him and he's a wrinkled old raisin.
Yeah, I honestly think if his appearance hadn't been mandated, I think Ronan would have come off a lot better.
Yeah,
probably. Also, I have to say about that scene as well, this is my ultimate nitpick, but I always hate it in science fiction where they do that thing where an entire planet is just somewhere you can rest and you're in space on the surface. And I'm like, planets are bigger than this, guys. And if you're virtually in space when you're sat on a planet, you're dead. You're on a meteor or something. That's not how planets work. Is that just me?
I think it's time to break out the Joel gif.
I'll throw that in when I edit then, fair enough. But yeah, one final quick acting note, because I'm an absolute nerd. This is the final appearance of the character The Other, who first appeared in Avengers, Joss Whedon's film. And if you didn't know it, that character is played by Alexis Denisof, who Whedon fans will know as Wesley Wyndham-Price from Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel. I love how he just gets unceremoniously killed by Ronan and nobody cares.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Awesome. Did you know that was Alexis Denisof, or are you not actually a sort of Buffy and Angel fan?
I knew it was Denisof, and weirdly enough, I wasn't much of a Buffy fan, but I was addicted to Angel.
Good man. Better show. Right. So DK, that's DK. Well, first of all, DK and Toby, any other notes on acting that I haven't hit yet?
I want to talk about Thanos, but I think it's more of a writing issue that I have with him.
Okay.
So I don't think it's the right point. His performance is good. Let's just say that and my problems.
Yeah. That's fine. Well, do you want us to move on?
Why
to
he is
next?
in this story at all, and why can't he just not be in it?
And I will bathe the starways in your blood.
That's fair enough. We'll go for it. Like I said, we may as well jump into writing next if you have no other acting notes. That makes sense. You've kind of led us there organically. So, yeah, in terms of the writing of Thanos, what did you want to say?
He doesn't need to be in the story at all. Kick him out.
Yeah. I think
everything that is needed from the story about this overall saga is conveyed with the mentions of Thanos without his appearance. We don't need this little appearance that just says, hey, this guy exists, look. Because apparently people are too dumb to notice when he's named multiple times.
That's the thing, though. That's what I was going to say.
Is a main character in this movie. Like
that's the thing. I think you would be waiting for him because there are so many characters who are linked to him that I think if he didn't appear, it would be kind of weird.
But if sure, in an expectation way, maybe. But I think just the story, even about Ronan, would have worked better if Thanos just didn't appear as like this entity that just is on the screen as well. And because I feel like the moment Thanos actually appears, you kind of, at least I expect then that he takes more of a role and not just dips in for 5 seconds and then vanish.
See, I really liked the bit at the end because I always liked them sort of selling how serious the threat is, and I don't think Lee Pace, bless his heart, is selling that moment very well. But then I think it's great at the very end of the movie when I think it's Korath says to him, "You can't take the stone. Are you an idiot?" Betraying Thanos. He's the most powerful being in the galaxy, and Ronan just goes, "Not anymore." Even at the very end of the movie, that joke where they're like, "Drax, you finally got your revenge on Ronan," and he's like, "Yes, but of course Ronan's just a puppet. It's Thanos that I really have to go for." I don't know if that joke would work if you hadn't seen him, you know. But yeah, I'm kind of playing devil's advocate a bit there, I suppose. But, yeah. What about you, DK? Any thoughts on that?
Again, if Thanos had not been in it, I can see both sides. If Thanos hadn't been in it, Ronan would have been more of a threat. But yeah, it was, as we said, it was mandated. It didn't need to be there, but obviously they had the game plan for the phases and stuff like that. So he was chucked in, and it doesn't make that big an impression, in the grand scheme of things. The movie would have worked fine without him. But again, because it's Brolin, what limited time he had, he did make that impression. Again, it is going back to the writing, but they had to do it, basically.
That's the thing related to that. I do wonder, I don't know if anybody knows this, but I do wonder how much was dictated to Gunn and Nicole Perlman, the screenwriters, that they had to put in because, like, for example, the Infinity Stone in this movie is the central MacGuffin. So was that them, or was this like, you need to get an Infinity Stone in there? Because it seems very central to the plot if they were just given it, and I don't know how well it would have worked if it wasn't an Infinity Stone. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, they could have mandated that. Yeah, you've got to put an Infinity Stone in. That's got to be the premise, and Gunn could have written around that. But you could have, arguably done that without having Thanos there.
Well, yeah, no, I wasn't saying with that. I just mean like how much of it was, because I think we all assume a lot of the time, oh, the studio made you do this and did that and stuff. And I wonder how much of it is that and how much of it is, like I said, they can't surely have said, put an Infinity Stone in the movie that you've already written, because if you don't have that central element, then you've got no script. So surely they were doing that already,
I think it's maybe of a case of that they already had a plan of like, oh, we want to have like a powerful thing, object, whatever. And then obviously, I think probably Gunn even himself looked and saw, oh, they're doing Infinity Stones. Why not take this? It fits. It would make Marvel happy. It would serve my point well. It would all work together.
I do think the producers would have had a checklist. I don't think it's a question of, Stephen Moffat writing, as in, here's a title, go and write something that involves that shit.
No, but I do wonder how much of it is because, as I said, we know that Gunn is a huge geek for these things anyway. That's why he kind of took on the role and did what he did. And there's so many things in here that will be important or expanded on. And I'd love to just know and be a fly on the wall how much of it was stuff Gunn put in that then became important and how much of it was we have plans for this. Like I've got a list here of things that includes like the Infinity Stone, obviously Thanos, the Kree, who would become hugely important, not just in the MCU, but like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. ran with the Kree for a long time. And obviously the Celestials, you would have had to mention them because that's what the Nowhere is, the severed head of the Celestial. Yeah. And then it sells the Infinity Stone that, as you mentioned, you see Eson the Searcher use it. But it's like, did they know at this point that they were going to make an Eternals movie? Because it was so much later.
I don't think so.
I agree with Toby there. I don't think they thought that far ahead. I think it would have been, pipe dream. It would have been nice had we got a movie with Celestials in later on. Unfortunately, the one we got wasn't very good. But yeah, I think at this point it was just let's just chuck everything in. It'll just be an Easter egg fest.
Yeah. And like I said, I'd love to know how many of those Easter eggs were like James Gunn being like, "Oh, I love this character," or "I love this moment," and how much was just like Kevin Feige going, "You know what? We might use the Celestials later, so chuck one of those in there." You know?
Yeah.
I'm waffling a bit.
I don't think so. Especially not with all the mentions and Easter eggs and cameras. I don't think there was any notes to that.
I think
because if that was a mission that Marvel has to just chuck an Easter eggs everywhere, I think every movie would have gotten this weight of Easter eggs, but it doesn't. So I feel like this is definitely something that's specific to Gunn. And I think to the main plot, I think a lot of things are just intertwined naturally through the saga with Gamora as being part of the crew, and I think it just kind of worked itself out to just fit in. I think a lot of thought is probably made by Gunn himself to kind of fit it in. I don't think it was a lot of, oh, you have to do this or that. The only thing I could see of being mandated was that Thanos has to appear in some way.
Yeah.
Because I feel like he was kind of squished in for me personally further than.
Yeah, I mean, you get the sense of that because they'd cast Josh Brolin at this point, and you got the sense that they kind of wanted to say, we want to let the audience know this is our Thanos going forward, because they'd only seen the other actor. And so it was a good way to be like, this is Thanos. Next time you see him, it'll be, other than post-credit bits and pieces, it'll be, when his plan comes to fruition, and we need to set him up, I suppose, in that way. But I will say, this film does much better of a job, whether it be intentional or not, of setting up things for the future than, for example, Iron Man 2. The way that a lot of people complain about that being bogged down with, we've got to set up Avengers. And I think that it's a lot more shoehorned in there than it seems like here. Everything does seem natural and organic. But sorry, DK, you were interrupted there. What were you saying?
I can't remember what I was saying, to be honest.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Right. So, well, DK, did you have any thoughts on writing you wanted to?
I just think I love it because, yes, they'd all been, very, very good comic book adaptations until this point. But I remember the general sense of unease when the trailer for Guardians was first released, because this was like, this is so outlandish. But they went fully into that. And it worked, and I love it. It's just completely, it's batshit crazy. Let's be honest. When you compare this to the first Iron Man, and even Iron Man at its most, ridiculous, the stripper pole in the plane and stuff like that, it comes nowhere near Guardians. So it was a gamble, but they didn't do what they did with the old X-Men movies and thought, let's put everyone in black leather and try and make it more grounded. Gunn just went completely into this, and it's just I love it for it. I think by far and away, it's the writing is such that it's a standout movie that you can watch with the Thanos notwithstanding. It works as a standalone movie as well as part of the larger story, and I think the writing on this, just the dialogue. You go from the plotting, obviously there's a MacGuffin. It's not going to be Shakespeare. You have to get from A to B. There's contrivances. Fine. But the way they handled it, I just thought was done really well. And I think the dialogue, and yes, there was a lot ad-libbed, but I think the dialogue just sparkles, even in the, the quiet scenes like with Quill and Gamora and, the Walkman. And later on, where they're all sat around just chatting about what they're going to do with the plan, I think the writing on this is just first class. And I'm not Gunn's biggest fan. I'll say that, but I think when he hits the mark, he really hits it. And on this and on Volume 2, he really hit it.
Yeah, that's fair enough. What was I going to say? Let's see. So, Toby, any thoughts on writing you wanted to bring up before I lead us a bit further here?
No. Well, yes, one thing. As we already talked about, the plot is, the general story is not the most elaborate, but I feel like it really focuses on characters, and I think that makes it work. And I think that's one of Gunn's strength, I think, in writing, focusing on characters and not really creating elaborate mysteries or something, or like a grand story or something. He's more of a character writer, I feel, from the stuff we have seen. I mean, from this movie and later stuff that we have seen from him. And yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do kind of. It's weird because fine well, DK, that I'm very skeptical about what a Gunn Superman movie is going to look like now that we know it's coming, and I'm so protective of that character that I'm very nervous of it. But I certainly can see a lot more now that I've watched this movie. Like, he does get character, and he is capable of doing characters who aren't just outrageous or stereotypes or, aggressively stupid or whatever. And I'm like, so, I don't, not necessarily everybody's going to, and even when the character is like that, I mean, I could not believe how he completely changed my opinion of 360 of Peacemaker when I watched the TV series compared to how I thought of him in the movie. And I was like, well, that's so weird because it's the same character. So why did you do him so dirty in the film and then give him really big depth when it came to the series, But that's never, there, I suppose.
I will say that I would rather see the Guardians version of Gunn do the Superman down.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Suicide Squad.
Yeah, definitely.
And definitely, more than Slither.
Oh, yeah. Or Super at the absolute worst case scenario, because that is terrible. I despise that movie.
I like it to a point where he just goes completely edgelord, and then you just think, okay, that's changed the tone a little.
Yeah, I don't like it. Sorry. But yeah. Related to what you were saying, though, I did want to say it's kind of nice that this is it's a startling intro to the cosmic side of Marvel, but I do kind of resent this retroactive history that forgets that Thor had to lay a lot of that groundwork first, because if Thor hadn't worked, things like that would have been completely off the table. Because like you said, before that, you've got Iron Man and Hulk, which are very much, Hulk, perhaps a little bit outrageous, but he'd had a TV series and everything at this point, so people knew the character. And Iron Man was very much set in a grounded world. You were going to have Captain America, but that's also very, like, even the broad concepts, like, cryogenically frozen for years and whatever, it's still a relatively grounded movie. But I really like that first Thor movie because I don't think it gets credit for, like I said, if that hadn't worked, if people just weren't willing to accept that, the MCU would be a very different beast than it is right now.
Yeah, I like the first one. In fact, I'm one of the few people that seem to like the second one.
Yeah, I do like the second one. I don't love it, but I certainly like it, and I don't think it deserves the rep it gets. But that's a different conversation for a different time. We're talking about Guardians. But yes, in terms of the outlandish concepts, we've all seen the memes where it's just like DC, people will never accept a Wonder Woman movie just yet. Yeah, Marvel. Yeah, exactly. And it is kind of like, there is a degree of that that's kind of like, huh. And you did make it work. It's weird.
Yeah, but, I do appreciate that they Bill Mantlo, creator of Raccoon, was really ill at this point, and they invited him to a special screening, and he loved it apparently. And I always like it when it's always good when you see the people involved in creating these characters get some recognition.
Yeah, and it always kind of sticks in your craw a bit when people aren't given. Like, I forget the chap's name, bless him, but the guy who created Thanos and wrote Infinity War, just getting next to Stalin, that's right, getting next to nothing for the Avengers Infinity War movie, and it's like, this dude's literal concept you're taking here, but whatever. Anyway, in terms of writing, I have a load of notes, so forgive me, I just kind of want to rattle through so I don't feel like I haven't said it, because I just tend to overnote and overanalyze. So first of all, I do like that the movie opens by basically telling you that it's going to be all about Star-Lord's mother and the love for her, in much the same way that the second one tells you it's going to all be about his father. It's a really nice dichotomy there, and it does make me wonder what sort of the central thing in Volume 3 is going to be. If you haven't seen the holiday special, spoiler alert, but it might be his relationship with his sister, I guess.
I can't see him going back to that now. I think they've kind of touched upon it and moved on. I can't see Gunn, reverting to that.
Yeah, it kind of has to. I think these movies benefit though from having that central, not framework, because it doesn't. Not every sort of moment of the movie is about that, but having that be the lodestone that you build on, I think really benefits these first two Guardians movies. And I like that. Is it a bit convenient that he gets abducted right as his mother dies? At first, I thought so. Then I realized that if you watch the other movies and stuff, it's deliberate because it's like his father sending for him because he knows, he's going to be on his own at that point. His mother's gone. So that makes sense retroactively. I love that. And again, this is something I obviously had noticed this, but it didn't really register with me that it's super important that young Peter can't touch his mother's hand as she dies. And then the ultimate resolution of everything is you have to link hands, and he can sort of touch hands with the vision of his mother. And I was like, that really is super important in the grand scheme of things. So I did like that. You've already mentioned the kind of Star-Lord who moment. Has to be said, this is a very memeable movie. There's so many lines of dialogue and bits and pieces. Do either of you have a favorite meme just quickly from this that you, or is it just simply who?
No, I'm going to go with, I'm going to need that guy's ...
I love this particular part of the writing, which is how, okay, Drax isn't in the movie yet, but the Guardians basically come together by the fact that there are 3 factions at cross purposes all chasing each other on that opening scene on Xandar. So you've got Rocket and Groot trying to catch Star-Lord and then, getting sight of Gamora and seeing if they can do that. And then Gamora chasing down Quill to get the orb. And this fantastic, this is such good writing in terms of...
It does have a touch of the farcical about it, and it's really well done.
But without being ridiculous, though, it takes the kind of trope of farce and stuff, but it never feels unnatural or anything. What was I going to say? Oh, and related to that, the fact that the movie gives you the exposition about the characters in a very organic way, just through their arrest records and stuff. And it's just kind of like, this is quite ingenious, because the other option would be to stop the movie like original Suicide Squad style and have a little breakdown on screen. And I was like, that does not work, as we learned from the first Suicide Squad movie. Yeah. So having like Peter Serafinovich basically read you the Marvel Handbook Cliff Notes is surprisingly effective, I do love, like you said, a lot of the jokes. The Rocket prosthetic joke, the moment is so good when you think that they're having a romantic, liaison, and it just completely subverts it, which it does a lot of subversion in this movie, but with Gamora just saying,
I know who you are, Peter Quill, and I am not some starry-eyed waif here to succumb to your pelvic sorcery.
Awesome. I love Rocket's kind of drunk, sad rant when he just finally breaks down about, nobody, I never asked to be this. Nobody asks me how I feel. Everyone's making fun of me. They're calling me things. And for me, that's one of the central scenes character-wise in the film, because my heart broke for that little freaking rodent in that scene.
the tone switches on a dime, and it's done so well that it doesn't break the immersion.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And again, the movie as a whole, on a macrocosm, echoes what I said about the Xandar scene, because then you get the Ravagers, Ronan, Nova, Nebula, all these multiple forces kind of chasing the protagonists around. And yet it never feels like it's overwhelmed with all this. It kind of fits the narrative greatly. And it does the same thing as I'm now kind of talking about it. I realize it does the same thing in the sequel, because you've got like the Sovereign, you've got Ego, you've got all these forces again, just chasing the Guardians down across the galaxy. And again, it works really well. So yeah, awesome. The moment of it's such a kind of cliche, I suppose, the moment where the heroes have to reach their low point. And in this film, it's like when Drax has been defeated by Ronan and he's sort of drowning and Gamora's dying in space. But that scene is so flippin' good, the way it's, Star-Lord saves her life and everything. Though there is a moment that really annoys me because it undercuts what I think should have been kept as a serious moment when he's rescued Gamora and they're in the Ravager ship, and it plays it for the laugh of there was just a moment there where I felt so dang heroic, and she kind of rose her eyes and I was like, I wish we didn't have that beat, because I'd really rather have sat with the seriousness of that for a second longer, But yeah, anyway, you've already mentioned, but the circle scene is just, again, writing perfection. I could write the whole thing out, but every bit of dialogue in this, every line is so fantastic. It sums up each character brilliantly, but the real crux of it is definitely...
I have lived most of my life surrounded by my enemies. I will be grateful to die among my friends.
Related to that, I like how everyone has their own role and their relevant personal challenge in the end battle. It's Gamora who takes on Nebula. it's Peter who has to, fly the ship and eventually faces off with Ronan. Rocket is trying to help out Denari and Sal, and they all have their part to play. It's great. Yeah, I can't really think of what. Obviously, the moment that breaks everyone's hearts and mine too is the whole "we are Groot" as he kind of cocoons them, and Rocket's kind of exasperated sadness at Groot dying, and makes me well up every single time.
I do like the little reference as well to Space Invaders when they're all coming down attacking Xandar.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. I was too busy thinking that the Xandarian fleet, when they all combined, might have been a reference to the Tholian web from Star Trek, because it looks very like it.
I do think it had touches of that, but yeah, apparently it was a conscious reference towards Space Invaders as well.
Yeah, that's so weird. I keep forgetting to look for things like this, but yeah. So related to that, I do like all the things that are set up for the future. So the hint about his dad, the Ravagers were hired, and him being told by Nova Prime, "You're half Terran." And I do love the troll switch out. And again, as I said, I'm not sold on Yondu, but moments like this really got me there when it's like he sees that he's been tricked with the troll doll and he just smiles and he doesn't care at all. He's just like, yeah, my guy, I guess. So it works. And the rest I've kind of talked about, the little dance and the stroking of Rocket when he's sad. And I love that baby Groot, I wish Gunn had made it clearer within the narrative that it's not the same guy. It's kind of more like an offspring, because he did have to come out and say that in a lot of interviews and stuff later. Yeah. And that's not remotely made clear, I think, in the movie, which I think it should have been. But yeah. So DK, do you want to talk about the directing next? Do you want to start us off on anything that you have to say about that?
I just thought it was a very competent. I've not really got any points, not any particular scenes that stand out to me. I just think it was really well done. I mean, I wasn't a big fan of Gunn. I've not seen any of his trauma stuff. Like I said, I think the only thing I'd seen prior to this was Slither. I don't think I'd seen Super until after this. But from what I'd seen of Slither, didn't really impress me much.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't. I did have low expectations going in, but yeah, did a competent job. He didn't just do a competent job, he did a bang-up job. I
fantastic. You can kind of tell he's got a passion and a love for these characters in this cosmic Marvel world, for sure. Yeah. What about you then, Toby? Any thoughts on direction before I jump in with notes again?
No, not directly. No.
That's fair enough. Yeah, that's okay. I'll just say there's little moments that I wanted to touch on. Like I said, my film student brain was clicking in, and I wanted to shout out the opening on Morag, I think, is so good in that it sets your tone of what to expect the movie to be, and it is the entire film's tone right there for you. The fact that it starts off serious and you get him doing the Indiana Jones bit, looking for the thing, and then it just kicks into, what is it, Come and Get Your Love, and he's dancing around and kicking at the little rodents, and even the title reveal, I think, is like, you know what film this is going to be. Special shout out for the costuming. I love that every character kind of looks like they look natural, and yet they all have an appearance that is so iconic that it can be easily cosplayed. Starting with Star-Lord's kind of red leathery jacket to like Gamora's outfits and everything basically. The Nova, everyone in the movie is just looking incredible, and it is really well done. And it's not a sort of department that I often thank, and I think we should for this movie. I love this. This is definitely a directorial touch, I suppose, but the fact that he plays it for the joke of Groot stealing the item in the background that they're saying you definitely want to get last, it is so funny. It works so well, and it's such a visual gag that you have to be so precisely set up. Loved it. Just loved it. The fly through space to the Pina Colada song. Loved that too. Cherry bomb under your little Act 3 exposition and the suiting up scene. And yes, it's cliche, but the kind of group all coming together and walking towards you shot is just brilliant. I love the sheer variety of shots that you get in the Xandar space battle. Because as I was viewing it with, like I said, this more critical lens, I was like, Gunn's never static, and he's a really good director when you notice these things. They're shots from like inside the various spaceships through the windows, the outside, inside the cargo bay of the Dark Aster, in the various Nova ships. And there's one particular shot where he has the Milano in the shot, but it's like bottom right. It's nowhere foregrounded, yet it is completely still your focus. And I was like, that is just brilliant direction. You know, I think he does such a good job. And this isn't easy, this kind of sci-fi space battle-y stuff. But as you said, the fact that he even gets the Space Invaders sense in there, even if I didn't pick up on it, is kind of it's pretty awesome.
He did blow me away with this because, like I said, my limited experience of him, I wasn't entirely sold, but he blew me away with this. I just think he would. I think it's one of the things that disappointed me about his Suicide Squad. I was expecting Guardians level, and to me, it just wasn't.
Yeah, I think it wasn't quite up there with me either. There's bits and pieces, but
yeah, that could be down to the writing. So
maybe, yeah. But yeah, a little thing, but I do love the way that all the Nova ships. First of all, the fact that they all look like stars, and secondly, that they can all combine into one big giant Megazord transformer.
Yeah,
sort of
I knew Megazord was going to come into this at some point.
Well, I had to. Yeah, it's contractual obligation.
Our listeners at home, Mike is a Power Rangers.
Check me out on the Pasty Sheep Nerd Bible podcast in their newest episode to find out more about this. Yeah, well, we've mentioned it, but the beautiful Groot lighting up the way with the sort of whatever it is, the little lights thing is so well done. I've mentioned this, but the film, a lot of the humor I think comes from subverting expectations. So the fact that we're steeling ourselves for Nebula to attack, and Drax just literally blows us straight away into, nobody insults my friends like that. It's just like, oh, wow, okay. Again, directing note, the camera, the fact that it travels with Yondu's arrow as it travels in a circle through people, like that is such a simple thing that you might not even pick up on, but it adds so much dynamism to that scene, and it's not something every director would do. Like a lot of them would keep the camera there and then, track it from the outside, but this camera, it's like the camera is on the arrow, and it's just like, oh, mwah, love it. Any notes from? I'll let you decide who goes first, but any notes on the visual effects from either of you?
I think I forgot how good this movie looks. I totally forgot, and I feel like it's kind like I don't like to be the person saying, "Oh, Marvel movies look like shit right now."
It's hard not to when you see this, though, when you see what they
this
could
movie
do.
kind of forces you to at least say, yeah. But
there are definitely some that you feel like didn't get the focus that like this got back in 2014, because there's things in here that you're like, wow, this would not look as good now, would it? And I really hope Volume 3 doesn't.
Company, I can't remember the name, so forgive me if anybody out there knows, or if you can look it up, Mike. But I believe the effects company for this were only ever used in the MCU on this film.
No way. That's so weird. I mean, I love Volume 2 as well, don't get me wrong, but yeah, I'm with you, Toby. But yeah, carry on, you were saying.
But I think it's not only like the quality of the effects. I think also a lot of the composition of the like shots, like how Xander looks. I really like how it looks futuristic, but I feel like a lot of futuristic stuff, kinda, especially if it's like in futuristic white, which is like okay, can get quickly very depressing or sterile, and it doesn't fall into that trap. Even though it's a lot of white in that, and I really like that. Just in general, the prison looks amazing. I feel like they all look real, and it's not only like that the effects make that, but also like the way stuff is just built in the sets and all. They all really make it look real, and that is something that I can't say about other later Marvel movies.
Yeah,
they look
it's a lot harder in this one to tell what's CGI and what isn't, whereas it becomes painfully obvious in some of the later movies, as you said. Awesome. I'm getting, by the way, DK, that it was someone called MPC, or Moving Picture Company.
That's it,
VFX, for Guardians of the Galaxy. But yeah, any other thoughts, Toby, on that?
No, I lost my.
Sorry, I just wanted to jump in with the company. DK, any thoughts then on visual effects?
I think it's a gorgeous film to look at, even when it's its most dive sleazy areas. It's just it's such a cliche, but it's one of these movies that I could describe as a feast for the eyes. I think it's beautiful.
It's kind of weird because I was watching this at the same time as I've mentioned off air to you guys as Adrienne on our Discord, who's been on our episodes a few times. And I'd already made the note that like Morag, first of all, and then all of the planetscapes look beautiful and are really well done. Like when you see them from orbit or the vistas of the, appearance from afar, they look like they could be classic science fiction paintings. There's a particular name like Frank Franzetta or the like. It looks like they could be from those classic days. And then I think Adrienne, not to spoil audience feedback, but she did say all of these places are places I would love to visit. They all look amazing, except maybe the kiln, but it's like, every planet and everything just looks stunning. And as I basically already said to Toby, you can't tell if it's a set that they built or if it's VFX because it's that good. You can't see the join. I wanted to shout out a few little things that I like because I'm a nerd and I wanted to do it. I love the Star-Lord helmet effect. The way it just kind of, dissolves into almost like a retracting kind of thing. I love the Milano. I love Rocket's extendable gun. As I said, I love the Nova starships. And I love Peter's blasters because they're just such a cool design, like the way it has two prongs, I suppose, on the top and bottom. Love it.
Mate. Just wait till the black hole review.
Oh, okay, fair enough. And related again to what you were saying, Toby, I think Rocket and Groot look much better than they have any right to. You never doubt their realness. You don't doubt that there's really a raccoon and a tree there. And you do think, if that was a modern Marvel movie, would they not look as real? Would they look a bit more fake? Because it is flawless. And these are not easy things to do. I mean, particularly Rocket, when you're talking about fur that you're having to do as a CG element, that is blummin' difficult to do, And yet, I mean, just look at DK's avatar. That doesn't look fake at all. It should. It's ludicrous, and yet you believe it. It's just great. And my last note about VFX: the fight over Xandar at the end is just breathtaking. It was my, the highlight of the movie for me when I first came out of it, and it is pretty much every time since because it's a triumph of special effects, sound, acting, directing, and it's just amazing. It's one of my favorite little pieces of science fiction. Even in bad movies, there are moments like that. Like I put it up there with, for example, the Sentinels swarming Zion in the third Matrix film, like that half-hour extended sequence. Not a great movie, but I love that sequence. And I would say, this Xandar fight is, if I ever made a compilation of like favorite science fiction moments or scenes or battles, this would definitely be something I would include in it. So any other thoughts on VFX from either of you guys?
No, I think I pretty much said everything.
I already said everything I wanted to say.
That's fair enough. Well, we should talk about the music and sound. Ordinarily, we wouldn't have a lot to say, but this particular movie being what it is, obviously, the soundtrack is central. I will say, I think I prefer Awesome Mix Volume 2, but this still rocks, and I think redefined movie soundtracks outside of maybe Tarantino. It's a virtual jukebox musical because I find myself singing along with every song that kicks in. And I wondered if you guys had similar thoughts, and maybe if you could tell me if you have a favorite track from the Awesome Mix that's used in the movie or a moment where it kicks in. It's hard to choose, isn't it?
It is hard to choose. I'm going to have to go with the Pina Colada song, even though the lyrics are absolutely freaking abysmal. I never really listened to the lyrics.
It's terrible. The story's terrible. It's just like, we both wanted to cheat, so let's stay together. What?
Yeah. But that aside, it's got a nice. I've got to sound like a pensioner. It's got a nice melody.
It's the way it plays with the tone of that moment when it's so quiet, and then he just comes zooming at the camera through space to, "Do you like Pete?"
Yeah.
I mean, wow, okay.
I love it because to me it harkens back to those days of big blockbusters with just really kick-ass soundtracks and we'll get to that at a later review because I know it will be coming there. Those 80s movies that had these amazing soundtracks you'll get on cassette and just
I know what you're thinking of.
Play it until it wore out. And it's I mean Tyler Bates's soundtrack is phenomenal. It's a really good. But when you add that to, contemporary, as it were, soundtrack, I just think it's just fantastic. I will disagree with you in that I do prefer this one to Volume 2. There's just one or two songs on Volume 2 that I do prefer, but other than that, I think this fucks, man.
Fair enough. I'll save my thoughts because I think I don't just mean the songs. I mean the way that the songs are used and undercut in Volume 2. But I'll save that for a future, hopefully, Volume 2 review.
Yeah.
Because, awesome. What about you, Toby? Any sort of highlights musically in terms of songs or anything?
First of all, I think in general, I really like how the music is utilized in this movie, and how it actually has a point that there is like popular music in this movie, and not just. I mean, it's fun to have it just in general. It's always fun, but I really like especially that it has actually a point in the narrative in this movie, that the songs are there, and that's just a little touch that I think is really, really great. Favorite song from the soundtrack? Probably Cherry Bomb.
Yeah, I think that's probably my favorite moment because, like I said, the way it plays through the exposition to the final group hero shot is it's so good. Yeah, and because it's such a recognizable song, it's like, oh, that's how you use that. Awesome. Yeah, I like that too. Fair enough. I will say, yeah, as you kind of already said, DK, it gets overshadowed by the actual sort of, pop music soundtrack, but the score by Tyler Bates is incredible. It's at least equally as good. If you're out there and you wanted to hear my highlights, they are vast because I noticed it on Escaping Morag, the Kiln Escape, the fanfare kicking in as the Guardians are seen together in the lift, the pod attack on Nowhere, Gamora dying, Drax joining Rocket and Groot, the sad version of the fanfare as they're sat in the circle, the way it really kicks in during the Xandar space battle, the taking hands scene, the reveal of the new ship, and the letter from his mum, all of which had really strong musical sort of score moments. And I love that listening to it now because it's one of the few scores that I just own and listen to. On every single track, Tyler Bates works in the same leitmotif, which is the sort of the way that I call it the Guardians fanfare, the way it just goes like do 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 do, and it would later be used on the song Guardians Inferno, the original song that they made on the Awesome Mix Volume 2, but it's so recognizable, notable, and iconic that I was just like, I wish I had this level of genius to create something this amazing. But, yeah, fair enough. Where were we? Anything else from you guys then? Just any random other moments or no?
No, just really well done movie all around.
What we'll do then, we'll jump into the section that we always do, which is our favorite character, moment, and line. Then I'll throw it to DK for some audience feedback, and then we'll come back and give our conclusions and scores. So, Toby, you are the guest. We'll come to you first. No. Who is your favorite character in the movie?
Who's my favorite character in the movie? I'm gonna go stick with what I said in the very beginning. I was really impressed with Gamora in this movie, on a level that I just did not remember that it was so good.
I love that. I love that everyone's going to probably have a different answer. We'll see. But yeah, I love that. And I love that, the way you explained it is just really good. It made me appreciate the character as well. Awesome. What about you, DK? Who's your favorite character?
Every single character in this movie shines, and all of them are memorable in their own way. But, from my avatar, it was always going to be Rocket. If I were in the MCU, I would be Rocket. Dude is my spirit animal.
I was fully expecting you to go with Star-Lord.
No, it's always going to be Rocket. I mean, he's the reason Gunn made this movie, and he's the reason I love this movie. So yeah, Rocket every time. As much as I love Quill, sorry, dude, it's Rocket.
That's fair enough. Do you guys need me to give my favorite character?
Go for it.
Yeah, I'll just say all of them. So we'll move on to the next. Oh, all right.
What a cop-out.
If you're going to force me to choose, I'll go with Rocket Raccoon. I did have that down already. I did say if I have to look at it, it's definitely Rocket for me too. Because, Rocket really is the heart of the film and is the character that you take to heart. And Gunn is very much aware of this as well, which is why he's, at time of recording, got a sword of Damocles hanging over his head, with Volume 3, because you can't threaten a character we don't give a crap about, and we all really hope that Rocket comes out of Volume 3 okay. So just don't break our hearts, man.
At the time of playing this, some people have seen it, man.
I know, right? I know.
There are probably people weeping into the freaking cornflakes.
Well, I've just downloaded the soundtrack and I was listening through it today, actually a little bit earlier, and there is a track on there, I think by the Flaming Lips, which is all about like, everyone has to die. There comes a time and moment, and I was like, I know this is going to be played when a character that I love has been taken from me, and I'm not ready.
How is it to listen to? Because on paper, it doesn't look as impressive to me as Volume 1 and 2.
It's a very weird experience when compared to 1 and 2 because it's a lot more contemporary. And yeah, it kind of jars a lot more the way that it has that difference, but it also includes my favorite song possibly of all time, Since You've Been Gone by Rainbow, which I can't believe it's taken until Volume 3 to get into one of these movies. So I have to automatically love it.
Fair enough.
Awesome. So yeah. Anyway, Toby, that was a slight detour, but what is your favorite moment in the film?
What is my favorite moment? I did not prepare this question. Can I get a minute to think about it? And
absolutely. We'll give you a minute. Absolutely. DK, what about you? What was your favorite moment in the film?
Mine is a bunch of jackasses standing in a circle scene. Gets to the essence of these characters. It gives them all great dialogue, and it's got you both on the edge of your seat and laughing in equal measure. Love it.
Yeah. If 12% of a plan, that's not a plan. Yeah. I am Groot. What do you mean it's better than 11%? So many moments are so good.
I told you I was thinking about something else.
Yeah, I just said blowing me up would not be saving me. Oh, I wasn't listening. I was thinking of something else. Yeah. There are so many contenders because I could easily have picked that and I would have absolutely meant it. But again, I tried to do this because, listener, we do this all the time now. Sorry, Toby, I don't think you've been on while we've done this, so it might have caught you off guard. But yeah. I had to try and narrow it down as best that I could. And I'm probably going to get a lot of stick here, but I'm going to slightly cheat and say that my favorite moment is the third act.
Oh, for fuck's sake, man. You started off with every character, and now it's...
that was a joke. I had that written as a joke to emphasize that I love everyone, but I have to pick the third act. If you ask me to narrow it down even a bit more specifically, the Xandar space battle, because my sci-fi nerd heart just thinks this is incredible, and especially the memory of watching it on the big screen, just being like, this is my Star Wars right now. This is amazing. So yeah, that's what I would go with. Toby, have you had any thoughts, or should we move on to our favorite lines and then come back?
No, I have a thought.
Okay.
It is the bar scene before the collector, where they're all in the bar and it's like an escalation. And
yeah,
I really love how all the characters really clash in that moment, but it's all brought back together really quickly and geniusly done.
Yeah. Awesome. Fantastic choices all around. Like I said, you could pick anything and I would say yes to it. So absolutely. And Toby, do you have a favorite line or should we come to you last again?
I can't quote it right now. It's in the same scene. What it says.
Has to get made. I didn't ask to be torn apart and put back together over and over and turned into some little monster.
Right, DK, you favorite line?
This was incredibly there's so many good lines in this.
I know. I've written a list of them.
I know. I'm simply going to go with one which is 2 words, and it's the way he says it as well. It's when Rocket gets the gun and goes,
oh, yeah.
You know an ass kicking's coming, and I'm just there for it, brother. I freaking love it.
I did write a huge list of lines that could have been contenders for my favorite, but in the end, my favorite line was cemented every time I see this film, and it was never in doubt. And it's actually a little exchange that comes toward the end of the movie, and it is...
Peter Quill, this is Denarian Sal of the Nova Corps. With the record, I advised against trusting you here.
They got my message!
Prove me wrong.
Just love that moment. I'm a sucker for moments like that where it's like the character that you think hates you is just like, prove me wrong. Like, yeah! It gets me pumped up no end. So that would be my little moment. And yeah, fair enough. So DK, the time has come to throw it open to our audience, who I'm sure have all seen and have lots of thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy. So let's hope they were a little bit probably more erudite than my rambly notes. And let me ask you to give us our audience feedback, please.
Yeah, no worries. We'll start with Jamie from our Discord server. He says, most people, Groot is the best character. Me, I prefer Rocket. Either way, Guardians is definitely one of the best MCU movies. It's fun, well directed, it's got great characters, great music, and is an absolute blast. I do prefer the sequel personally, but the first is still a banger. Adrienne, again on the Discord, she says, man, I'd forgotten how much I love this movie. Still feeling the love for Rocket. Great editing, amazing CGI. Love the sound effects. Soundtrack is to die for. As you were saying, I literally want to go to all those places except the Kilner.
Yeah.
And then, in response to you talking about the score, she says, the score truly is amazing. She says, I love Rocket's, in quotes, Picard move. I can't remember Picard doing that with regards to...
it's the scene where he pulls down his top, like his jumper that he's wearing. He tugs it down the way that Picard does.
Trying to make room in his banana hammock. She says her favourite scene is Groot wiping Rocket's tear. In fact, the whole that whole sequence is incredibly touching. Honourable mentions, the Quill saving Gamora just outside nowhere, the Cherry Bomb Groot walk, and Nova Corps ships interlocking sequence.
All of my favourites as well. Yeah, awesome.
Nick over on Facebook, he says, Guardians of the Galaxy was a sign of Marvel's growing confidence in the MCU. It neared the end of Phase 2, considered a risk prior to release, what with expanding out into more fantastical sci-fi realms and talking raccoons, sentient trees and whatnot. I always thought it sounded great, especially with James Gunn at the helm and on script duties. It's a great introduction to varied, well-rounded and excellently cast characters and the origin of how they come together. It stands on its own as a complete story, whilst also setting up adventures for adventures to come and ties to the wider MCU. Full of fun, quotable dialogue and imaginative action, it also has a lot of heart. While not in the very top echelons of my personal MCU list, it's pretty high and it's always a good time. And the soundtrack absolutely slaps too. Now, Ross Burlingame over on Mastodon says, this was and remains my favourite MCU movie. At a time when the universe was suffering from a lot of sameness, this came along and delivered a smart, stylized shock to the system and set the stage for a lot of the best Marvel content to follow. Now, again, on Mastodon, Fabian, this is one that I put out and he replied to me. He says, it was an awesome movie. The main driving point, in my opinion, was the music James Gunn chose. The story was great and the team, oh man, irreplaceable. But all that just fit together because of the good music. Now, Sandy, who's another regular on the podcast, she says, I remember when I first heard they were making Guardians of the Galaxy and thinking, no way this can work as a live action. A talking raccoon, a tree, inconceivable. I watched with others, Pratt beefed up for the role and wondered how this could all possibly come together. And yet from the first dance steps on Morag to the Candy Girl finale, every second was a delight. MCU at its best. Its masters acting, directing, story, cinematography, set design and sound, with a killer soundtrack that had us all hooked on a feeling for months. See what you did there, Sandy? With sweetly balanced drama, action and humour, I can't ever get enough of this totally rewatchable film. Near perfection in my book. Angela, again, who's appeared on the podcast before, she said it was a fun film for someone who knew nothing of the comic books. Great to see Gillen and Saldana getting strong female character roles, whereas Drax and Star-Lord are basically himbos. Rocket is cute and Groot is, well, Groot. Great film for all ages. Now, over on Facebook, Rick says, enjoyable fun and chaos. You could tell there was a lot of ad-libbing in between the plot points, and most of them worked. And Jim Baltimore simply says, I am Groot. But however, I've got to give the last one to Mike's very own brother. Mike wanted a description of what he thought to it. And his basic description was, nah, not special, just funny, innit?
Thank you, Sam, for that feedback. Sam Milliken there, a man of many words. So, fair enough. Right, so if you guys are ready, we'll jump into our conclusion and our score out of 5 stars. Tobi, are you prepared or should we go first?
No, I can just do a quick conclusion.
Great.
Like, there is not a lot to say because just everything is great.
Yeah.
yeah, the directing is great. It looks great. The acting is great. The writing is great. Everything is just really, really great. It's well done, and like I could name specific things that are especially well done, but why we already covered all of this, and I don't have one thing that I really want to go out and say, oh, I need to mention that. Everything is great, and there's no conclusion. It's great.
Fair
Moving
enough.
on. Oh,
Awesome,
I need to give a score.
Score out of 5.
Score out of 5 is a 5.
Absolutely.
5.
Absolutely great. I'd love to hear it. DK, we'll come to you next. What about your conclusion and your score out of 5 stars?
Yeah. We're way over a decade into the MCU at this point. Some entries have been good, some not so good, and some have been exceptional. I'd argue this is one of the latter. Guardians of the Galaxy is a big, brash, crazy, colourful, good time. Marvel and James Gunn took a gamble by bringing us a bunch of characters most of the movie-going audience had never heard of and made them as familiar as Marvel's heavy hitters. Writing and direction is on point. Every actor gives a damn good performance. There's no character here that fades into the background. It has stakes without being po-faced, has plenty of laughs without becoming a parody of itself. We've also not had a soundtrack this good since the days of Top Gun and Rocky IV. It's weird to think it's almost 10 years old. It's aged beautifully and is, to me at least, as fresh now as it was when it was released. And if I need a comfort MCU movie, it's this one every single time. Nice. There's nothing else really I can say other than it's just pure, enjoyable fun, and I love it. And it's a 5 from me.
Wow, okay. Awesome. Right. I'm going to give you my conclusion and score out of 5 then. I said often when we review these movies, it's the second or third time I've seen it, but this one is baked into my DNA. It's Marvel Comics, science fiction, comedy, and a story about outsiders. This is me in movie form. Despite me knowing this film inside and out, watching this time with a critical eye made me appreciate it even more. The way that it's structured, the characterization, the heart, the impressive direction, the flair, the music, the jokes that all hit even after repeated viewings. If I have to play party pooper, there's a lack of seriousness in a couple of small moments that irks. I don't love some of the changes from the source material. There's also a bit of a sense at times of the film having to do the slow introductions of an origin story. Similarly, there are other moments where it feels just a little bit bogged down with setup for the cinematic universe, which slows it down a tad and just fits a little bit less snugly. But these are nitpicks in a piece of brilliance. I can't go perfect, but it is an easy 4.5 out of 5 for me. So let me jump in and see if I can work out the average for that then. It comes to 4.8, 3 recurring. So we'll just call it 4.8 out of 5, which is as close to perfection as you can get. And I'm very happy about that because it is, I would like hovering between 4.5 and 5 actually more for me, but I don't like to go with that. So the final score being 4.8, I'm overjoyed with that. I'm thrilled. So yeah, a strong recommend from us. I think it's safe to say if you've never seen this movie, you should probably do that now.
Immediately.
Run out and find a copy. It's on Disney Plus. Go watch it. So yeah, awesome. Hopefully you've enjoyed this episode. Do stay tuned. We will be back soon. But before any of that, just let me say, first of all, thank you so much to both of you for joining me. Thank you, Tobi, for coming back on as a guest for a Marvel episode.
Thank you for having me. And can I say this? I will be back.
Yes, stay tuned. We may well have Tobi back for another Marvel movie at some point in the year. So yeah, among other things, of course. Yeah.
If you're smart, you can guess.
Pretty much, yeah. You know how we do things on the podcast by now, but yeah. DK, thank you so much for being a brilliant co-host as always.
Always a pleasure, especially on something like this, mate.
Awesome, and yeah, I've just been me, and you know the drill by now. You can find us at all of our social medias that are always on the link in the description. We have started a page called Buy Me a Coffee. It's at Ko-fi. You can find the link to that in our description just to help us with the kind of costs of running this podcast. We don't want to stop now. We're just kind of kicking on into high gear because we just hit 200 subscribers very recently, and we are very thrilled to be able to say that. So yeah, every one of you, thank you for listening. Thank you so much for still enjoying this. Hopefully you still are. Feedback is always appreciated. You can always find the link to my Discord if you did want to ask to join. Tobi's quite active in there, and if not, just stay tuned. He'll be back to the Silver Screen podcasts. Do head on over to our sister channel if you are a Trekkie or a general Star Trek fan, where you can catch our review of the entire 3 seasons of Star Trek Picard. That should be dropping on May 14th. So yeah, hopefully we'll catch you here again soon. DK, do you want to give the sign off again? Go on, I'll let you.
Well, considering it's the next episode, and by the way, if you've got any thoughts on any of the episodes that's coming up, please drop us a line. We're happy to hear from them. But yes, back to the dude in black leather. We'll be back.
I'll be back.
You have been listening to the Silver Screen Podcast, hosted by Michael Wilson and DK. Created, produced, and edited by Michael Wilson. Behind the scenes sections and additional material produced by DK. Music by Timeless Journey. More information can be found at soundcloud.com/Timeless Journey. Follow the podcast on Instagram at Silver Screen Podcast, or look for the Silver Screen Podcast under Facebook groups. Links to all our social media accounts and more are in this episode's description. This podcast is available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Just look for Silver Screen, Hit or Miss Star Trek. This has been a Mike's Podcast production. Copyright 2022. Thank you for listening.